Douglas Wilson. His presentation is project number 9, Persuade with Power, from the Basic Communications Manual. The time requested, Mr. Timer, is 8 to 10 minutes. The objectives of this speech are to persuade listeners to adopt your viewpoint or ideas or to take some action, to appeal to the audience's interest, and number 3, to use logic and emotion to support your position. And of course, to avoid using those. The Christmas season is, for the most part, a season of joy and happiness and giving. What am I going to get for Aunt May and Uncle Arthur? For my sister, my brother, best friend, the dog, the cat, and yes, Mom and Dad. Most importantly, what are you going to get me? For many young minds, and older too, there are other more puzzling questions that burn through their thoughts. Since we're approaching an altruistic occasion, who is this Santa Claus character? How does he get the billions of homes around the globe with this tiny sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer in just 24 hours? How does a fat man get down those tiny chimneys and in some cases into homes with no chimneys to distribute his bounty of toys? And how does he get all those toys into that tiny sleigh anyway? Is Santa Claus real? So many questions, so little time. You're in luck. Douglas has made this his life work and has discovered some interesting facts that may shed some light on the subject. Please welcome distinguished Toastmaster Douglas Wilson as he presents the case for Santa Claus.
Thank you.
The case for Santa Claus.
When I was about 9 years old, we lived in a double-decker house. My brothers and I lived on the second floor. And my grandmother came to visit for Christmas. And we were all giddy with excitement to wait the arrival of Santa Claus. And as I mentioned earlier in my table topics, the one thing we got to do Christmas morning was to go downstairs, get our sock and bring it up to our bedrooms and open that and the little prizes and trinkets that were inside there. Well, I barely could get to sleep on Christmas Eve. And so I knew that it was pressing Santa Claus to be able to make it to our house because I didn't want to mess up his time schedule. But about 3 o'clock in the morning, I was awakened to the noise of footsteps coming up the stairs and the low rumbling of 2 people whispering to each other. And I heard very carefully listening, that it was my grandmother and my mother talking with each other. And I kind of peeked my eye open a little bit so they didn't know that I was awake and watched them bring my stocking and lay it down on the table next to my bed. Oh, ideas went running through my head immediately, like, what are they doing with my Christmas stocking? And where's Santa Claus? Why didn't he bring my Christmas stocking? And wait a minute, what's up with this? And then I figured it out. I said, oh, Santa's already been here, and Mom and Grandma were just bringing it up so I wouldn't have to trip down the stairs and wake everybody up in the morning to get it. I said, oh, okay. So I rolled over and went back to sleep, and I got up a little later and played with my stocking, but it got me thinking, especially when I overheard some kids at school saying, there's no such thing as Santa Claus. What? There's no such thing as Santa Claus? But my mom and dad have been telling me that Santa Claus was real all these years. Oh my goodness, what other mythological lies have they been telling me? What other things are not really true that they've said were true? After all, when we think about it, Santa Claus is one of the oldest mythological characters in existence. Maybe only 1 or 2 that have been around longer than he has. And so the question goes through my mind is Santa Claus real? And so I went off and thinking, well, maybe Santa Claus isn't real because that's what everybody now said. Oh, Mom and Dad are Santa Claus, and you just gotta, when you become older, you'll be Santa Claus, and you'll buy the presents for your kids. I said, I really didn't like that. So I went on a quest. And it wasn't until years later, I wasn't even paying attention when it happened, but I'm sitting in front of the television watching a documentary on BBC. And we all know that everything that's aired on BBC is real and truthful. And so I'm watching this documentary about an alien species that I never knew existed. I mean, the government wasn't telling us that there really are aliens and that they have visited Earth before. And so there's this documentary on this television about this race of time travelers. Not only time travelers, but they travel in space as well. And they had these mysterious machines called TARDIS. And TARDIS is an acronym that says time and relative dimension in space. And so I'm trying to wrap my head around this, and I saw this guy's TARDIS. And in this particular case, this one doctor, is what they called him, had a TARDIS that looked like a blue police box. It was about 3 feet by 3 feet by 3 feet. But the interesting thing about this is that you would walk around it and say, well, isn't that interesting? And then you see somebody walk out, you see a couple more people walk out, and you go, how many people are in that box? And you'd open that box in, and you'd walk into the box, and you see a room about this size, maybe a little bit larger. And you cover your eyes, you back out, you close the door, and you go around the box one more time. And then you open that door again, and here's this huge room. Oh my God, he says, I finally understood. TARDIS stands for time and relative dimension in space, meaning, now get this, I know this is going to be hard to accept, it's larger on the inside than it is on the outside. And not only with this room, there were branches off. In fact, in one episode of this, he walked down the stairs out to another giant room, off into another whole section of this. And I'm saying, how big is this thing on the inside? And so I watched this story unravel. And the interesting, why is this guy's got a police box? It says, if you go back into the Roman times and you set that thing up in ancient Rome, people will notice. I mean, there's a blue police box in here, and I've never seen anything like that before. Well, it turned out this doctor had a defective TARDIS, because the TARDIS has a device which allows it to change its appearance, almost like a cloaking device of the Klingons we know about. So if you want to go back to ancient Rome and you dematerialize here and you materialize in ancient Rome, you could materialize looking like a column in the Colosseum. And then you look in your monitors and make sure nobody's around, and the door slides open and you step out and you step back. Of course, you're dressed in togas like the Romans are, so you blend in. And apparently the doctor could speak anybody's language, because no matter where he went, he understood the language that they were speaking, and they understood him. And it would look like a column. Well, the doctor's didn't. His, what they call chameleon circuit, was broken. So it always looked like a blue police box, which was convenient, because then you always knew who the doctor was and didn't get him confused with one of the other Time Lords that was traveling in a different device that actually changed and allowed it to do that. Several years later, it finally hit me. Oh! I was just amazed at the possibilities that this created. Because, stay with me now, what if Santa Claus had a TARDIS? Now, think about this, because one of the questions that we have is, one, how can Santa Claus visit all of these homes around the world in only 24 hours in a sled and 8 tiny reindeer? I don't care how fast those guys are. If you've got 0.000000001 seconds per house to cram into 24 hours, you can't do it. It's mathematically impossible. The second thing is, how many trips to the North Pole does he have to make to fill up that little bag in his sleigh? And all of a sudden it hit me. What if Santa Claus is a Time Lord? And what if his TARDIS, at Christmas time, he adjusts the chameleon circuit to appear as if it's a sleigh with 8 tiny reindeer. Yeah, it's a mind-boggling thought. And because if it's bigger on the inside, then he can spend a couple weeks before Christmas time loading up the inside with all of the presents he needs to take. And then he can dematerialize from the North Pole, and he appears at Minnie's house at 1 minute after midnight, because he's got to do it in 24 hours. And you say, oh, and he started at the time zone, the Eastern. He's now worked his way around to the United States. He's at Minnie's house at 1 minute after midnight. And he's there dutifully putting his presents underneath the tree. And then he goes up, zip, back in his time machine. It doesn't make any difference whether it took him 20 minutes, 30 minutes, whatever, immaterial, because I'm going to dematerialize and rematerialize at Will's house at 1 minute after midnight. And I take all my time I need to finish his thing there, and I dematerialize, and I materialize in Robert's house at 1 minute after midnight. And then Martha's house at 1 minute after midnight. Now, you guys all live on the same street. Stay with me here. Can you imagine what it would appear like to a drunk stumbling down your street at 1 minute after midnight? There's Santa Claus in your house. Well, there's Santa Claus in his house. There's Santa Claus everywhere at the same time. How many of these guys are there? Oh my God, this stuff is really messing with my brain. And I'm going and straighten that junk out right just like that. So I think I have uncovered the secret of the myth of Santa Claus, because it is not a myth. Santa Claus is real. I just proved it to you. Santa Claus has a TARDIS, which can look like a sleigh and 8 tiny reindeer. Inside, it's a monstrous size. He can hold all of the toys. No, I'm not having to make a second guess and third or fourth trip back to the North Pole to reload and head back out again. That just takes up too much time. But if you've got a time machine, you can be anywhere you want to at any time of the day. And I don't care if it takes you 365 days, you can make Christmas fit into 24 hours. Ladies and gentlemen, fellow Toastmasters, I hope that you have finally discovered that you can once again believe in Santa Claus. Because of all the myths that are out there, Santa Claus is real. He is a Time Lord from Gallifrey. Mr. Toastmaster.
Douglas, your story reminds me of when I was a child. My dad and his cronies would often take a visit out to the back of the car and have a shot of Mad Dog 2020. They still having shots.